prepare to launch in 3, 2, 1.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Tyler James with ComixLaunch doing a special Friday live stream with y'all. And I have a special guest today that I'm excited to bring on and introduce a first timer to the show. But my guest today is an artist. He's an illustrator. He's a cartoonist. He's an educator. He's worked for clients that include Marvel Entertainment, DC Comics, Epic Games, Fox, and Illumination Films, among others. Probably best known for his work on Batman and Deadpool and Daredevil and Spider-Man, but he's also maintained a strong presence on Kickstarter over the years. He's used it to fund his sketchbooks, and he is back there with his creator-owned work, a series called Hysteria One-Man Gang, the second issue for which is now live on Kickstarter. So welcome to ComixLaunch, Mike Hawthorne. How you doing today, Mike?
Hey, good, man. Thank you for having me. It's a big fan of the show, so it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited that you reached out and we were able to pull this together in short order. I know you're in the middle of it right now with the Kickstarter launch for a book that you have. It's called Hysteria One-Man Gang. And so without let's bury in the lead, let's tell us a little bit about it. What's this project all about, and why this project? Why now? And what are people going to get when they get it in their hands?
Yeah. What the image you're seeing is actually the wraparound cover for issue 2. Hysteria is how I started my career. So back in '99, I could not break into comics no matter how hard I tried. So I just self-published. And the original series went 4 issues before I went bust. This is back, honestly, had I had Kickstarter back then, I probably would never have worked for Marvel and DC. I really wanted to just be a cartoonist. And back then you had to get distributed. So I got picked up by Diamond. And quickly, I thought I was being special by doing an indie book monthly. Back then, everybody did bi-monthly. Yeah. I was a little nuts and did it monthly and made one of the issues 45 pages because I was just so excited to be making this thing. And I went out of business because that's what you did back then when you had an independent series. And then I proceeded to just beat everybody in the head with this thing. I ended up having shorts published through Oni Press, Slave Labor, Image. Like anybody that would put out a short or a series, I would do something for them. His One-Man Gang, so that's Bruce Lopez. The entire thing takes place on a fictional Caribbean island after a second civil war in the United States. Now that seems like duh now, but in '99, I actually got quite a bit of criticism from reviewers who thought the idea of a second civil war was silly. So joke's on them. Now, my goal is to finish this. So that cover, that yellow poster you just passed, was from the original One-Man Gang series back in 2005. Those were promo posters I sent out to stores, and Oni had picked it up Image had picked it up at that point. And we got about 2 issues in before the thing went bust. So I never got to finish it. I have the 3rd issue finished and half of the 4th issue finished. But in those days, you just, if the thing didn't work, it didn't work. So, but the readership of it never left.
And I'm just curious because, for a lot of creators, especially aspiring, and I know, when I was coming up, like, there was this idea in your head. It was like, oh, well, all I need to do is get an image, get an image logo on my book. And so, like, when you say going bust, and I'm thinking about, like, order numbers from back then, price points, all sorts of things to factor in. Like, just, because we have, as it's creators here, it's people that are running budget spreadsheets and doing sort of things. Like, what were those initial orders numbers looking, and when were you like, oh, wait a minute, like, this is not doable? Was that your decision? Was that the publisher's decision? I'm
glad you asked, because I love the fact that we can actually get into the weeds a little bit with the show. So Image at the time, now I have a new Image series coming out, but I have to look at the contract to see how much has changed. But at the time, you had, so Image is essentially a like non-for-profit. They don't really take any of your money, but you pay a fee for each book to cover things like obviously uh, the cost of running the office so that they can put books out, storing your books, whatever. And I think the fee at the time was like $1,000 per issue for a black and white book. So every time you put one of those books out, you incurred $1,000 bill. I believe. Please don't quote me on this. It's been 20 years, so I might get the numbers wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, when I was looking at that deal in like the mid 2000s, I think it was like 2,000, 2,500. So maybe it was a little bit different. But the idea is the same. Is that like Image, like there is an Image fee for how they do that. You know, there's a certain amount per book that's coming off the top before you get any money, or potentially if it could potentially go in the red, right?
Right, that was the danger with my book. So, and it probably sounds odd if you're thinking of a publishing deal where like, why would a publisher charge you a fee? Every publisher is in your pocket. It's just a matter of how deep. And so Image is not it's a shallow reach into the pocket in terms of they don't own any of the IP. They don't own any of your, like once you pay off your fee, you're like getting most of the royalty money that's coming in from the sales of your book. I mean, it's a lucrative deal if you can get your book to sell. I just couldn't get my book to sell because it was weird. It was a cyberpunk story set in the Caribbean, which nobody knew what to make of. It was just an odd book, and so like every time one of those new issues came out, numbers weren't looking good. Image was. We also had some disputes over a previous book with another writer that was distributed overseas. So it just was like there was a bunch going on, and I didn't think I didn't want to end up in debt to Image, to my publisher, right? So, which theoretically can happen. I've never heard of them saying, hey, you owe us money, give it to us, like kind of thing. They're not a collections agency, but I just didn't, I'm sort of debt conscious about everything I'm doing. So I try not to because I have a family the whole time I'm making this stuff. So I'm very afraid of incurring debt while pursuing this. So it just didn't make sense. So we cut it off.
Yeah. And I, like you, I've never heard of like, you know, Eric Stevenson sending goons to people's houses to collect, right? But I have heard of things like, oh well, we're on our third volume, and we're hoping to like potentially that maybe this will be the one that gets us out of the red and into positive, so that we actually see paychecks coming back.
Yeah, and I did not want to be that guy. I did not want to be that guy that's like asking them just trust me a little longer. So yeah, it just was a thing. Plus, it was just me. It wasn't like I had a marketing team. I didn't have.
You were a one-man gang, right?
Yeah, literally. So never got to finish it. So the current book is me redoing it. I am editing the story for just sort of paring it down, adding more gags, all new art. I'm finishing that book that never got finished, and I honestly can only do it because of Kickstarter, right? Like, if I were to go back to Image and Eric and say like, hey, you know, do you want to finish this book that we never got to finish? We might be able to have that conversation, but it feels like a uphill fight for no good reason, especially when I can just pitch them an entirely new book, which is what they would prefer. So Kickstarter is allowing me to finish this weird story and have it weird in a good way, in my opinion, and have it connect directly with the people that had shown interest in it to begin with. I don't have to try to convince comic shops that, hey, this thing could work. That's negative, and that's an important part of the job. But I like the direct, like, because Hysteria was always popular with the people who got to read it, going all the way back to '99. And it was a lot more successful than I realized in the moment. That was the other thing, is like, if you're out there and you're sort of bummed about, hey, my book's not doing the numbers I want to do. I was there in '99. I was there in 2005 with this book thinking it's not doing great. And in retrospect, I realized like, I was kind of stupid about how I looked at these numbers. There was a Hysteria trade that Oni Press put out that sold about close to 1,000 copies. It was a $10 book. And I remember being bummed out. I'm like, oh man, that's a failure. Now, if I had 1,000 copies of a $10 trade, I'd be thrilled, right? Especially for an independent series. And I think seeing the market directly in terms of like now we're mailing books, like we're at our 16th Kickstarter, the 15 on our own, one with a buddy of mine named Jeff McCumsey. Where like now that I'm mailing packages out to people, I know what 1,000 readers can do for a book versus doing it in the direct market, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I remember seeing a stat, like if just talking about books, like overall, like they're saying like most books, like most books that are published don't sell over 500 copies. So like it is all relative, right? And I can also remember like the very first time we solicited through Diamond and sort of comparing our charts and look our book to like what the charts is like. How many? What are our orders going to be? Is it going to be 5,000, 10,000, 3,000? And it's like they come back and it's like, oh, 2,200. But then now when I think about that, like a 2,200 run for an indie book is actually like it's not that bad for outside of it.
Dude.
Especially with where Diamond's going.
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, it is incredible. 2,200 would be like, it's hard to grasp how all that stuff works because Diamond takes a huge percentage and they pass some of that on to retailers. But still, it's not going to make you rich, but that's a lot of books out in the world. And I just regret not appreciating it when I was doing these books independently. Anything like 1,000 just felt like a failure to me. And I think it was because I just didn't have any concept of what an indie book does versus a mainstream book, in quotation. So yeah, I regret that and trying to make up for it now and just like think small scale and just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, and I think we're in a good space right now with like, where Kickstarter is. It can sort of fill the gap and it can help even out the ability of a project that doesn't necessarily need to be a blockbuster success, but we could still be made. It could still move forward. You can still tell the story that you wanted to originally. And it's nice that can fill in the gap. Take me a little bit back to the beginning of your story. Like, did you always want to be an artist? Were you always an artist as a kid? And how did you get into comics?
Yeah, always. I mean, I'm not good at anything else. I wasn't in school, showing any kind of capacity to do anything well other than as a kid sketching on his math homework and things like that. So I grew up, loving graffiti, loving comics, and the combination of words and pictures were just a big gift for me. So I think once I discovered comics, that was it for me. I was not going to pursue anything else. Took every art class I could whenever I was in schools, and then eventually made my way to an art school where I ended up studying art and painting, just because there really wasn't a strong illustration program at that school at that time. And this is in Philly in the 90s. So it wasn't the art education was a little different then than it is now. Now I teach at college and we have like very nuanced degrees, like, things in gaming art or illustration that's focusing on editorial or something like that. Back then it was just like painting, sculpture, maybe you had some we had a glass blowing major, things like that. It was kind of broad. So, which I'm actually grateful for because I had to focus on just drawing skills. So I just got very traditional art education, lots and lots and lots of figure drawing, figure painting, anatomy, things like that. And but I always I looked at it as like, well, all this stuff is just going to make comics. I don't want to be a fine artist, but this is the stuff that I'm going to take over to making comics. And by the time I graduate college, I was never able, I didn't know anybody in comics, was never able to get a gig, but I had sent submissions to Marvel DC since I was like 15. I mean, it was so bad in the beginning, I was sending original art to them thinking, I'll just get my art back when I get hired by them. And eventually, at one point, my mother passed away. She was young, and I had never made comics, so I just stupidly just jumped in the comics business, sort of heartbroken and trying to make up for lost time, and that was Hysteria that I mentioned. The type of series that's based on my mom. I'm almost from Puerto Rico, so using this sort of fictional Caribbean island. I wanted to just make a comic almost to this who was never going to see it, and because she just, when your kid says they want to pursue art, a lot of parents sort of like seize up. They're worried about the kid, and then you tell them, "I'm going to make it even worse." But I know she was scared, but she still always supported me, and I think we were very, very poor when she passed. I'd poor our whole lives. I'd been homeless, and I was just like desperate to prove stuff in a stupid way to a ghost, and made this comic, tons of heart in it, like every bad financial decision you could make. Just like I just had to push this thing along, and it failed, but it proved I could make a comic. And I ended up, I had the luck of having a college professor that was also a college professor of Matt Wagner, who is famous for Grendel.
Yeah.
But like 15 years apart. And so I met Matt. Matt's sort of adjacent to Philly also. And I met him at a convention, showed him some stuff, and he was like, "This is great. I'm not giving you a gig, but good job, kid." And but it was sort of a door that cracked open a little bit, and he eventually gave me my first gig at Dark Horse, drawing a Grendel short, which was amazing for me. And then it was off to the races. Like it's a little like being a contractor. You build somebody's porch, you hope the neighbors see it and go, "Hey, who built that porch? That looks pretty good." They hire you to build their porch, and that's sort of what happened in my career. I just was lucky enough to, one gig led to another, but always making Hysteria in the background, just stubbornly not wanting to give it up.
Yeah.
And so I was always my plan was always to do a mainstream comic that would fund my creator-owned books, usually Hysteria. And I did that for probably 10 years, and it just was not working out because, number one, the work for hire stuff was taking up more and more of my time. And the creator-owned stuff at the time, it just wasn't like it didn't feel as wide open as it does now creatively, in terms of like, you would see an indie book succeed, and then everybody was in a rush to copy that one book, and there wasn't a lot of like, "Hey, let's try a different thing." And Hysteria was just goofy enough that, like, I don't know that people could, unless you read the thing, they didn't quite connect with it. And but the nice thing is, by constantly making stuff while doing stuff for Marvel, DC, etc., people started to ask about the thing more and more, and people remembered the original series, which is where we end up now, where enough people on the more independent side would like say, "Hey, you ever going to finish that book?" I love it.
Were you doing conventions and things at the time?
At first, no. Ironically, sorry.
Yeah, well, because one of the things that I think a lot of creators have found is it can be very tough to pull people in with your creator-owned stuff that nobody has any connection with. But when you can sort of like, "Oh, hey, here's some prints of covers that I did for Marvel and DC, and oh, by the way, what else is this on your table?"
Right.
You find that like it's the stuff that people know that draws them in, but things that they get really excited about is like these undiscovered gems that you can share at the table. But,
I wish I had that kind of wisdom at the time, because I did not realize that till pretty late in the game. I did a few shows early on in my career, and then stopped for a good 15 plus years. I was always on a monthly book, so it was like, monthly books are just an enormous grind. I was just head down drawing nonstop. But if I wasn't on a monthly book, I was training. So I was going to figure drawing, still going to, I would assign myself homework. You need to practice 4-point perspective or like weird things to try to get better at. And I just got so in the rabbit hole of just the art of drawing, or rather the training for drawing, that I lost connection with like the social part of drawing, of making comics. Did not go to cons until I'd say the last 4 years is when I sort of picked up on going back to conventions. And I realized, like, oh man, you've been an idiot. I should have just been because I think had I just done conventions this whole time, I probably would have been selling Little Can Hysteria the entire time.
Yeah.
Physically building up a readership. I like social media in the like old school sense, like actual media we could be social about and I can hand to you and talk about. And so I regret not doing that for all these years, because like you said, it would have been much easier to go, here's my Hysteria comic next to my Batman comic, you know, maybe you should check them both out.
Yeah, it's something that yeah, I mean, there's only so much time, right, in the day, and you know, it never slows down. It just the clock just keeps ticking. So like, there's always going to be choices to be made. Something that I have heard some feedback from people that, you know, do the art school thing is, you know, from traditional skills, it's excellent, but some of the things we're missing was like, all right, well, how do you actually make a living at this, or in this new world where there's, you know, less opportunities of people, like even like Marvel and DC, it's all work for hire and grind, and not a lot of long-term stability. And so like the idea of having a long-term career and having the ability to have an audience that no matter what editor is calling or not calling, you can fall back and do these projects or have some support and maintain that, seem to be something that like probably more art schools nowadays are shifting some resources towards that. But you know, or in an older time where the focus really is on traditional stuff.
Amen.
But on the flip side, as someone that was I drew a lot of comics in when I was in high school and coming up, but my training was on comic books. And I think, you know, there's a lot, you can learn a lot of bad lessons when all of your like your art and your anatomy is solely referencing the world of comics, where the talent level is a wide range. As someone that teaches anatomy, that teaches young artists, budding artists, like what are potentially some, like, I don't know, some bad habits or some common things that like the aspiring comic book creator really needs to learn or potentially unlearn, so that they can actually have a longevity as an artist that people are going to go to again and again. Any thoughts on that?
So this is always a tough one for me because I've been teaching, it was going on 12 years at an art college, and it's always figure painting, or rather figure drawing, anatomy, that kind of thing. And one of the things I'm mindful of is training out what's unique about an artist, and replacing it with technical skills. Because that's the thing I think I did to myself. Early on, my figures were way more exaggerated, and I'm trying to get back to that with Hysteria. But I trained it out of myself for a long time. But there are tons of bad habits you can pick up by, like you said, drawing specifically from comics. I think there is a lot of good that can be gleaned from it. Like, so you get dynamic figures. You don't compromise your style for correct anatomy. I will say that for me, I'd rather have the old school skills and adapt them to comics than not have them at all and hope for the best. By having that training, I can distort figures without making it feel like, how do I word this? I remember looking at McFarlane's Spider-Man as a kid and thinking that looks amazing because it's so crazy, but I was always aware that it was drawn. Right, so by having it be so exaggerated, the hand was always in it, and maybe that's good, right, for a lot of people. I like seeing the hand of the artist in the work, but when I'm really in a story, I like to sort of lose myself in it. And there are certain artists that I think that are able to maintain that and not push the exaggeration so far that you forget you're in a story. And so that was what I shot for. And this isn't a criticism to Todd. I think he was brilliant in that approach. But like years later, when I got to draw Amazing, I was like very mindful of like, I can't do what Todd did. And I want to find a way to still have him contort and do crazy things, but in a way that makes sense to the anatomy. And I guess my point is that comes from learning to draw the first. So my advice is always, if you can't get into an art program or an anatomy class, there are tons of resources that are free that you can pick up. My personal favorite is an old French anatomy book by a guy named Dr. Paul Richer, Richer. You can find it online for free. It's very old. There are tons of free PDFs. They're in French, unfortunately, usually, but the anatomical terms are still understandable and the drawings are clear. So you can use that to like start to. What I like about his book is that it's anatomically correct, but he also shows the anatomy as it moves. So he'll draw a guy doing, this and doing things, and then show the figure, and then show actual anatomy. There's also an online resource on YouTube, and they have their own channel called Proko, Proko. I actually taught a class for them through the Marvel program. They're exceptional. Their anatomy lessons are just awesome. So I would start there and try to train yourself into understanding how the figure's constructed, because it's really intuitive. Like once you start looking at the anatomy, you go, oh, that makes sense. You always need one muscle pulling and the other one's relaxing, and then it has to, like, nothing works by itself, and everything makes the figure change how it looks, and it to me is infinitely interesting. And then
I saw just in flipping through some of your past projects, you've got a cheat codes series, and even just I was flipping through and I saw one thing you did on foreshortening where you're like use the analogy of a chain link fence to show how how the bicep goes with the shoulder, goes with the and I'm like, oh, you know what, that actually that works, that makes sense, and I can see how that could make things easier. So yeah, it's interesting, a lot of stuff with that what you said there, and Todd McFarlane is funny you bring him up, because I can remember being like 9, 10, 11 years old, and Todd being my least favorite artist because his Spider-Man was just so different, and the characters and the exaggerations, and going from that to one of my all-time favorite artists, one by the time Spawn came out, and he was an institution, and it reminds me of the sort of, it's like a branding adage. I think maybe Seth Godin or some coined it, but just the concept that like different is better than better, and not to lose what makes you different as an artist, while at the same time at least understanding the fundamentals to know what rules you might be breaking or exaggerating. And that was something that I probably didn't do a good job at, where there were times when I'm like, I'm going to spend more time learning on, how to crosshatch like Liefeld or Jim Lee, and do cool effects, when I probably should have been focusing more on, forms and shapes, lighting, rendering, etc. But that's it is what it is.
But it can feel like what the hell, what route is correct, right? Because you're right. Like I remember Miller comparing himself to, I think it was John Buscema, and he's like, here's a guy that draws like Michelangelo, but he's not as popular as you think he should be. And so often it's not about, like, drawing skill doesn't guarantee success or popularity. And we say popularity, but what we're really saying is, like, does your book sell? And so Seth, the quote you're saying is correct in that Todd was undeniable, and you could not ignore his work because it was so, like, it was tip of the spear, right? And the tip of the spear is what gets the most meat up, but you need it. You need that, someone pushing the style and the art form in a way that makes the rest of us rethink it. Because I came into it with, and going back to starting Amazing, like, I was on Amazing Spider-Man, and had Todd not existed, I don't know that my Amazing Spider-Man would have looked, not that it was groundbreaking or anything. I'm just saying I had to keep him in mind. So you need those people that are weird or eccentric or strange or whatever, that still gets you thinking about the art differently. But I don't know how to be that. Like, I don't know. I tell students all the time, I don't know how to train you to sing in your way. I can just help you sing your way better. And that's my goal with myself and students, is to, like, show you the better way to take your particular voice and hone it versus trying to like tamp it down and have you sing my way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot there. And there are some things that can be taught, and there's some things that I think people just have to learn the hard way, or at least learn at the right time for them. I want to talk. I don't. On this show, we have a lot of obviously crowdfunders and Kickstarter creators. I don't get a ton of artists that have made it to the big two and have done that whole world. And there are a lot of artists out there, Marvel, DC, like that's still like the dream. But end of the day, dream jobs are still jobs.
Yeah.
What, from your experience, like what are some of like the pros and the cons for sort of getting these high level gigs, and where do you sort of see pursuing the big two or mainstream comics like fitting in for you as you move forward?
Gotcha. So yeah, first of all, it's always a to me that you aren't getting more guys like me that are seeing the magic that is Kickstarter, because I think you said earlier, just because you're hot now doesn't mean you're hot forever. You should always be developing something that you own. You mentioned everything doing is work for hire, and the truth is, like, I have 20 years of my creative output that is owned by other people, and I'm not crying about it. I knew that we signed all those contracts. But I can have a character in a new Deadpool movie, a credit, and have no agency over the character or anything done in the movie, right? Because it's just not mine. So to me, like as soon as I signed up for a Kickstarter account and just started looking and trying to figure it out, because I think this looks great. Like I was at a show recently, and the show promoter was complimenting me, and my instinct is always to like downplay it. Like, I'll give you a list of better artists if you try to compliment me, kind of thing. And he stopped me and says, look, man, he's like, more people have played in the MLB than have drawn Batman. Like, you did a unique thing. And then he says, and then let's like add to the fact that you Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, Hulk, Deadpool, Daredevil, like all these characters that are sort of dream jobs for everybody. And it helped, and this just happened this year, so it helped put it into perspective for me, because it can be easy to get down on the fact that like you work monthly books for a long time and you're just beat the hell and tired and you don't own a lot of the properties you've worked on. But recognize that it's a dream job and it's rarefied air, and it would be bad of me to say like, hey, that it's a pipe dream, it's not worth pursuing. If you're really in love with drawing some of these characters, you should absolutely do it, because I had a great time. I've been really, really, really fortunate to have drawn like everybody on my bucket list. Like literally, I remember getting to the last one and it was just like, it's weird, like what do I do next? So I say do it if you're really, really hot for it. However, please don't fool yourself to think like I have all these credits. It does not guarantee success on a book of my own. It does not guarantee success on Kickstarter, right? This current Kickstarter, we are about 10 days in, and this is the longest it's ever taken one of my big projects to fund, right? And this is post, I left Batman to do this book. So the logic is that like, oh, well, you just Batman, of course, the world's yours. You're going to be able to do whatever you want. And I've never looked at it that way, because it's just not the reality. So please don't pursue them because you think, well, if I do Batman, then I can do whatever I want. Everybody will think I'm a star. It is not often the case. It just doesn't. I mean, some people probably does. It has not been the case for me, and it's not a guarantee. I'd rather see, and I tell students this all the time, I'd rather see you just make things. Those gigs will probably come if you put good work out into the world, and then send that work out to the people who can make those decisions to like hire you for a book. but it is not a super elixir that's gonna like open up the comics industry for you. It will just I think what more than anything it comes from it is the ability to open doors, right? I can reach out to you and go, hey, you want to talk comics? And people are willing to like hear you out because you've proven that you're a serious professional and you have this track record. Your track record is still your name, and your name is still more important than being, these credits from the big two. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but that's how I just think they're great, but you should do it for the joy of wanting to make those books, not because you think anything big, quote unquote, will come from it.
Yeah, I think it's a good perspective to have and I think, it's probably a version of the Dunning-Kruger effect is like the farther you are away from the mountaintop, the farther away your perception of what the mountaintop is like until you get there, right? As it's like that with Kickstarter too. It's like, that just because you've had X number of projects succeed doesn't mean that every project is going to be bigger than the last, and being okay with that and letting each project sort of take the life of their own and find the audience that they're meant to find, I think is the way to go.
And if I can add, like,
go ahead, yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say one of the things I picked up from your show, because when I got into Kickstarters, who knows how to do this stuff, right? So reached out to Jeff, would run some, started listening to your show, and a bunch of other resources. And the thing that made it clear to me was that success on Kickstarter is not success, right? Like I'm using it to fund the project. I think what's happening now is I'm hearing from more and more people who are seeing 6-figure Kickstarters and going, that's for me. And I'm like, no, dude, it's probably not. It's probably not going to happen. Your goal should be to make the thing, and now you're off to the races. Now you have a thing to sell at cons, you have a thing to sell in your online store. Now you have a thing to, like you said, go to maybe Diamond with. It is the opening of the tap, and now you have to direct that water in a bunch of different ways. And that to me is what Kickstarter is really, really about. Like my Kickstarters do often like 4 or 5 figures, but I'm not doing these big giant Kickstarters, partly by design. Like I went to sell a kid a comic, the first Hysteria comic at a show, and he couldn't believe it was only $5. Like, I'd rather you buy it than not buy it because it's $10 and I made more money off of you, kind of thing. So I think that when we're talking about success on Kickstarter, like, I guess if I can say anything to anybody out there, not that I'm an expert, but like one of the things I'm hearing more and more is how people will get bummed out that their Kickstarter didn't make 100. And now they're able to live off of it for a year. First of all, you're not going to get $100,000 just because that's the number that's on the board.
Yeah, it's like that's 1.5% of comic book projects do 100K plus. So it's like if you have a 99% or a top 1% project, maybe you do. Maybe you're going to play the and there's a couple of different routes to it. Big IP, large omnibus collected edition, premium tiers out the wazoo with doing a lot of original art and commission stuff, or maybe you've got a blockbuster high concept and 35 not safe for work covers to go with it. Like, there are more proven paths to it, or 10 years of doing it as a web comic and building a big audience that way, and then finally pulling the trigger. Like there are pathways to that, but if you're not doing one of those sort of proven pathways, chances are it's not going to land there, right?
Yeah. And don't be bummed out about it. Like move forward. Just get a smaller project off the ground. I think our first Kickstarter that I did with Jeff was a comics thing, and we might have asked for 500 or something. I mean, it was not a lot of money because the goal was just to make these damn comics, not to live off of that thing. So I'm hearing more and more from like disappointed kids that are like, what's the point? My project probably won't be anyway, won't make enough to live off of it, or I won't look at this other guy making $1 million off of his comic. I'm like, dude, that's not like, is a part of the comics market that's crossing over to the Kickstarter market that I think is a drag, right? Like when you have when we had an book back in the 90s, and I'm like going back to what I mentioned earlier, and I'm only selling 1,000 copies. I thought that was failure because the book was selling 100,000 copies.
Yeah.
That kept me from pushing that project more because I didn't recognize it as a success. So if you can go on Kickstarter and you fund a $500,000 project, maybe make a couple $100 extra, that's a win. Take it and make the next.
Yeah.
Don't get discouraged.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I had a series where like, and this was a learning for me because, even, I got on Kickstarter relatively early. 2012 was my first launch. But even then I still had the idea in my head that, well, this Kickstarter's for big projects, right? So like, all right, yeah, I've got this big anthology project, 25, 30 creators. This is going to be a, hardcover book, oversized. We're going to do bells and whistles, but that's what Kickstarter is for, right? And then my next project after that was actually a much smaller project. It was a single issue, new series, trying to get that out the door. But I thought, well, yeah, that's for launching this series, but then, I'll launch this series and then I'll focus on the direct market and maybe use the Kickstarter to feed the direct market. And, when my orders numbers were, down sub 1,000 by issue 3, I'm like, oh, well, that's the end of this series, which I really loved writing. Yeah. Had I gone into it thinking, oh, well, direct market's cool, but Kickstarter is the primary launch vehicle to keep this series afloat and keep it going, who knows where that series could be today. And that was definitely one of those unfortunate lessons learned the hard way. But I'm so glad for a lot of the creators that have shown the power of serialization on Kickstarter, and that there are, this is probably a better, as far as indies go, it's a much better model than the monthly direct market, which most indies can't do without really sacrificing health, wealth, and sanity.
I've gotten asked, why didn't I pitch this series to somebody? And the truth is I probably could have, but this is allowing me to do things that, like you're saying, like, first of all, I can expectations low and still do I'm doing Hysteria while doing work for hire stuff still. But I also can't stress enough the magic of like getting to like touch every comic that you're going to read later. I don't normally do variants on my Hysteria comics, but for this one I did, where it was like, it's a black and white version of cover. I'm just like splattering red paint on it by hand, as if somebody's got beat up in front of the comic. Like, that's the thing I can't do outside of Kickstarter.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff that makes it fun. And I am purposely not thinking this any bigger than what it is at the moment on Kickstarter. It's a little trash can. I'm purposely even doing it like that because I don't want it. I want it to feel unique to this thing, so that later, if I collect a trade through a publisher or something, you will like, yeah, but I got the original special thing, like when we used to collect records, right? You might have listened to it on Spotify later, but I still have the original vinyl, and this was cool, and it came with this weird thing and that thing. And that, to me, is what makes Kickstarter really unique. That in a world where there are more and more people between you and the people reading your books or making whatever product you're making, record album, paintings, whatever, there are more and more people in the middle that you have to like hand off project to before it makes it to the person who enjoys it. Kickstarter's cut that out, man. Like, we can make a book and I can have it directly to the person who wants to read it with no middleman, no editor. I mean, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe we should give the guy blonde hair, something that would just drive me nuts, right? So this to me is kind of magic.
Yeah. And you'd sort of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just talking about how, you're surprised that more mainstream guys or artists don't dip their toes in the Kickstarter well. And, you've been doing something that I have been encouraging so many artists on the podcast to do more of. But I think it is one of the sort of cheat codes to profiting from creative work. And that's like when you can productize your process. And so like the fact that you've consistently launch sketchbooks. I know Steve Rude is somebody that, like, every year he puts out a sketchbook, does a crowdfunding launch on it, but it's basically it's work that he's doing in other ways, putting it into a product, doing a small launch. It doesn't have to do blockbuster numbers, but it helps fund a print run that you can sell in other Kickstarters.
Correct.
Or bring to conventions, and just keeps you relevant, keeps your Kickstarter page active, and keeps your backers activated. And I just think that's a smart way to go about it, so that you have this as another revenue source, as another fallback. Any thoughts on, like, from making a number of like doing everything from like a bigger art book to small sketchbooks, like any tips for sort of turning your process into product?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the warm-ups in particular. I do a warm-up sketch every day, and I will, I've done it for years, but I record them or live streaming them. And just to have content to, like, share with people online. Yeah. And I would finish a sketchbook, scan, put it as like a real quick, usually they're, what do you call them? Quick starters. They're like 10 days, 2 weeks top, and the goal is always really, really low. And so my advice would be, think very small with projects. Again, like, the big projects are a trap. I'd rather do four small projects a year than one really, really big one, unless it made $1. But the warm-ups allow me, like you said, to, first of all, I get to practice drawing. Second of all, I get to build a base for it. Third of all, I get to then essentially practice Kickstarters. Like, I can do these small, low risk. Like, I think most of the warm-ups, we ask for about $500 to $1,000 tops. And $1,000 is a more recent thing because of shipping. We used to ask for 500.
Yeah.
But it allowed me to, like, tweak how we run a Kickstarter, how we fulfill a Kickstarter, how we promote Kickstarters. And so when the bigger game comes, I feel more prepared. I'm just a big fan of practicing. And I think this is a good way to do it. Take a small project and run it through. The other thing I have benefited from is, like, my wife has a background in business. And with our first Kickstarter, the anatomy book that came out of my class, I offered a pencil and a poster. And she sat me down and she goes, here's why that's a problem, right? You have a book with a ring binder. You have to put a poster in there, but a ring binder doesn't damage it. Then I have to put a pencil in it. Where do we put a pencil? It doesn't damage the book and the poster. And so I had this, like, real world, like, oh shit, I didn't think this through. And she came up with a really elegant, like, she wrapped the pencils in blue tissue paper and put it in the spine. And I forget what she did with the poster. And it was a elegant, beautiful solution. But our new mantra has always become, like, what fits? Here's the box your book is going out in. What fits in this?
Yeah. And I think, like, there's a lot of parallels between conventions and Kickstarter, but some of the stuff that works really well at conventions, like those 11 by 17 prints, they suck on Kickstarter. You have to change your packaging. It's a different size. It might throw you into a different category. And I think what a lot of people that have been at this for a while have learned is, like, actually, you know what? Like, mini prints do just as well as on a Kickstarter that fit right with your book. Get some praise. We got Patrick Wedge just watching in from YouTube. Says Mike always delivers. Mike always delivers for your money and content for your backing, quick fulfillment, and quality stuff. So
thank you, Patrick. I appreciate you. He's been Patrick runs a lot of Kickstarters for me, Paul Miotti, and Amanda Connor. He knows his stuff. He's been helpful for us, like, immensely helpful. So thank you, Pat. Appreciate you.
Nice. Connect with Patrick too. So just in mentioning warm-up sketches, and I want to put this out there because I just think it's I don't see it as much on Kickstarters, but it's a great just tip and something that really helped us smooth out the dead zone for the last Kickstarter campaign that I did. But and I'll just pull it up from the last Kickstarter that I did. One thing that Joe Mulvey has been great. He's a great artist that I work with. I don't know if you had a chance to check out any of Joe's stuff, but
Yeah,
or no, Joe, he's one of the the funny. Like if you're ever at a comic book convention and Joe happens to be there, sidle up because a good story is going to come from it. But early on in the Kickstarter campaign, we will just ask our backers, hey, Joe does daily warm-up sketches. What do you want to see Joe draw? And so we did that. We had some backers supply. We had like a Howard the Duck. We had a couple of other examples of different characters, Luigi, just a lot of stuff that Joe has never drawn. But then over the course of the Kickstarter campaign, we will just, hey, here's Joe's new sketch, or here's his latest, and it was here's a Mumra. Joe did some work on Thundercats, or he did a Snake Eyes. Like never did that before, but we sold, I think, every single day for like the last 10 days of the campaign. We sold at least one original art piece of just like quick daily sketches. And, Joe's selling them for maybe, a little bit less than what he might do at a convention or something else. Right. But it's a great way to make that Kickstarter a little bit more interactive with your backers. And, and to also, it's that another great marketing principle is like, ask people what they want to buy and then sell it to them. Or ask people what they want to see. So,
well, I love this. So a friend of mine just asked me, like, because I did a post for the Kickstarter, because I made the mistake of, well, let me if I can do it during Comic-Con and still make it work. I don't know why I convinced myself that. But anyway, I made a post about how big San Diego Comic-Con news, Hysteria is not there, but it is on Kickstarter. And it was a stupid gag. But my friend was like, well, is that you like being frustrated that you're not at San Diego? And I said, no. What it is me trying to engage in a way that feels substantive. Like I don't want to just say, hey, here's my Kickstarter. Hey, here's my Kickstarter. Do that for 30 days straight.
Yeah.
So people just are fed up with it. I try to find reasons to like reach why I'm sharing this at the moment. So it might be in the case of what you're saying, like here is a process post this week, one of the pages of Hysteria on my Patreon. I'll share the entire video of me inking the thing. So it's every time I'm reaching out, it's with a bit of information or art or something to make it like mean something, not just, hey, buy my book. This is interactive, like you mentioned. It is social. It is me and you trying to connect over a comic book, or hopefully connecting over comics. So I love that. The idea of just having a reason for reaching out, like warm-up sketches or what have you. But it is to me, I think, if I send an email where like, hey, here's my just idea about why I specifically made this character this way, and I'll share about something with the just my thinking behind the story making of this thing, and that is so much better than just me going, hey man, I'm selling this thing, and if you give me money, you'll get this other thing. I don't want it to be that. So that warm-up idea is great, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's remembering that what you're doing is a campaign, and like any campaigns that you think of, breaking it up into milestones and having different events and having different things that go in with it. Like if you're running for a political office, you're not hitting the same exact thing every single time. You're making it up. Sometimes we're focusing on this group or this issue or this or kissing babies, shaking hands, like different things to show different aspects of you as the creator, and anything that you can do to draw in the audience and make, because this is one of those things where it is different. Like I can remember, like back in the day, the closest you could come to be like interacting with your favorite artist would be maybe getting a letter in the back of an issue, getting a response that way, or having a piece of fan art run in your page of your book if you were ever so lucky. But on Kickstarter, you're pretty much guaranteed that the talent that's making the book is going to see everything that you comment, is going to see every message that you send their way. And, if you can draw them in, that gives backers, and a lot of backers are people that, hey, they're not terribly creative people. They're never going to make a comic of their own, but to be able to say, hey, I helped make sure that this thing came into the world,
Right.
like
Right.
that's a special kind of engagement that you don't get from any other channel.
Correct. And look, like right now we're at 111 people. That's just a small village, right? Like that's enough people that we can have a community, and I can actually like get to know some of these folks. Like we have been lucky enough over the 16 campaigns that like we go to fill stuff. Hey, there's that guy, there's that woman. Like we get to see the same names over and over, to the point where sometimes we, not to say we're building friendships, but you don't get to really know these people, but you're building this sort of two-way readership. Like I get to really connect with you, and like a guy reached out to me for this campaign saying, hey man, and he didn't have to do this, but he says, hey, I can't back this campaign because the shipping to France is really crazy, but I just want to apologize for not backing it. I want you to know I still love the project, and I am going to get a digital copy. And I just thought, like, when does that happen, right? When have I like drawn a Batman book where a guy goes, I really wish I could buy that Batman book, but I'm kind of short on money this month. Let me reach out to Mike. It means so much more with these folks, and so like that, like I that's amazing. Like, okay, I'm gonna make less money because some people can't buy a book, but I actually love the fact that this guy feels like we've connected enough to say, hey, Mike, like, this is why you might not see my name when it comes time to fulfillment. Like that is running a small shop in a small town, right? That is like, hey, I wonder what happened to Joe. He used to come in every day and buy a pack of Marlboros. How's he doing? Kickstarter to me is sort of an online equivalent of that. Like I get to have the same customers, and that's a luxury. That's a luxury that I get to have connection with these people, and I get it. I've had the luck of doing these other books with these big publishers, and do a $1 million Deadpool comic. Like that one issue made $1 million. I don't know not one person that contributed to that, right? Like, and so yeah, it's great, but like this is more meaningful. And so to get back to the point, if I'm gonna market something to you, I don't want to market something to you. I want to show you why I think this thing is great. And then, because I'm not a good marketer, but if I love a thing, I will be on the verge of sounding like a maniac telling you about it, because I'm just like, dude, this comic's going to be awesome. Like he's going to literally fight. And sorry, I'm a little over the place because I genuinely love the stuff I'm putting in Kickstarter. Not to say I don't love my work for the big two, but it's still a job, like you said earlier. Yeah. This thing I'm not doing.
Deadpool's going to come out whether Mike's there or not. The Spider-Man is going to be here probably when we are long in the into the next life, right? But the stuff that you create, the stuff that you comes from you personally, and that the industry is not necessarily asking for or demanding, but you are going to will it into the world. Like that is that stuff is always going to play a special part in your heart. And you can, if you bring that passion, that is something that does attract people. Absolutely.
Good. I hope I don't sound like a crazy person, everybody. I'm sorry.
Oh, we're all a little bit crazy in this world. That's another thing that I've learned. Well, the book is called Hysteria, One Man Gang. It's live on Kickstarter. Anything else that you want to plug going into the new year? I know you've got a podcast that you do. I think you've got Substack or someplace where a newsletter.
So I'm on Patreon, Mike Hawthorne Art, and Substack. I write a monthly column. I put out a weekly newsletter, but I write a monthly column, and it goes on both sites. And that's free to read on my Patreon. I also do tons of other. So you mentioned I have a figure drawing podcast called Life Studied, which also has a sister book that we have funded through Kickstarter. And I have It Ain't Hard to Tell, a podcast I do with my very old friend Jamar. Sorry, he's my old friend. He's not a very old guy. Jamar Nicholas, who's a Scholastics cartoonist, he has a book there, and we just talk comics in terms of sort of like what you and I are doing, like just the nuts and bolts of comics. We do that twice a month on Patreon. So yeah, and I have an image series coming out eventually. I just don't know when. I'm working on that now.
Awesome. Is that are you writing and drawing that, or is that something you're partnering with?
Writing and drawing. I'm trying to get back to being a cartoonist, and Image is maybe unwise enough to like give me a shot to do a whole new series. So yeah, I have a whole new series coming out at Image, just hopefully sometime in late 2025 or early 2026.
Awesome, Mike. Well, it was great to hang out with you and chat about these issues. And I wish you the best of luck with this project and everything else that you have cooking.
Yeah,
thanks
and
so much.
Again, fan and show, man. Everybody should be, if you're at all interested in Kickstarter, look at the backlog of Tyler's work. It's good stuff.
Appreciate that. Well, thanks, Mike, for being here. Thanks to everyone that tuned in and catches the replay. And we all can't wait to see what you launch next. Take care, everybody.
All right, bye.